Welcome to the She Leads podcast, a space that empowers women like you to build success in a way that feels authentic, energizing, and aligned with who you really are. In a world that tries to convince us that success means hustling harder and following everyone else's rules, we're here to rewrite the script. This is about success that feels nourishing, not depleting. Success that brings the fulfillment, impact, and recognition you deserve, whilst ultimately giving you the financial power to create the future you want and inspire meaningful change in the world around you. Make sure to hit the follow button so that you never miss an episode, and come and say hello on Instagram. You can find us at she_leads.academy. Let's dive in. Hello ladies, and welcome to a brand new episode of the She Leads show. First of all, I want to say thank you so much, because I have received so many messages from you guys about, well, first of all about the She Leads show and our rebrand, but specifically around the episode I created on the pressure to be likable. It seemed that a lot of you really resonated with this idea that as women, to be successful, we also have to be likable. We feel that pressure. And so for this episode, I actually want to go a little bit deeper with that theme, because this has been something that's been on my mind recently, because I think so many of us, we say that we want women to succeed, that we celebrate ambition, independence, self-made stories. But the truth, I think, is far more complicated. And often women are only embraced when their success actually feels familiar, it feels comfortable, and really it feels relatable. And if we step too far beyond those bounds, if we earn too much, if we shine too brightly, if we become, too polished or too unapologetic, admiration can very quickly turn into resentment. And I think unlike men, who are often celebrated for outgrowing the crowd, women can be punished for it. We can be tugged back down with, people saying, oh, we've got too arrogant, or we're speaking of our privilege or being out of touch. So for this episode, I really want to explore that paradox further, why we demand relatability from women in ways that we rarely do from men, and why so many women who do climb too high are not necessarily met with support, but sometimes with suspicion or frustration. Now, I was watching something recently, and well, many of you will know if you've been listening to this for a while. I moved to Spain. It was over 3 years ago now, and I didn't really anticipate how much I would miss the seasons. So, obviously the weather is beautiful here, but it's this time of the year, September time, that I really just long for autumn, for cozy season. So anyway, I digress. To fill that gap, my guilty pleasure is to watch vlogs, and I like to watch UK vlogs because they remind me of home, and they make me feel a little less homesick. And so recently I actually stumbled across Molly May's vlog, which if you're in the UK, you'll have obviously heard about her. If you're not in the UK, maybe you haven't, but she basically won Love Island in the UK, and that kind of really skyrocketed her into fame. And I had actually watched her Amazon documentary, which I enjoyed, and I watched it out of curiosity and didn't really know much about her other than the fact that she won Love Island. But I was intrigued, and I think one of the reasons maybe I was intrigued was because she has really skyrocketed. She's built this incredibly powerful personal brand. She's launched a successful fashion line. And, I love learning about women who carve out success for themselves, especially in spaces where they are often underestimated. But I think what struck me even more watching her vlogs was, not just the businesswoman, but she's an everyday mother. Her daughter is actually close in age to my youngest daughter. So I found myself resonating with, the familiar challenges of raising a strong-willed girl, doing your best to guide her in a way, but also striving to honor the other demanding role in your life, which is the pursuit of a fulfilling career. So anyway, I was watching this, and it got me thinking about something else, which I think is very common for women who are climbing their way to success. And it's how we navigate the messy, often contradictory space between being aspirational and being relatable. And I know for Molly May, this is something that's really come up. It's become a bit of a lightning rod for criticism, because she has been accused of no longer being relatable, of being tone deaf or out of touch. I think she made a comment about, we all have the same 24 hours. And that gave drew backlash because obviously it's overlooking things like structural inequality. I know that her fashion brand has also been scrutinized for, pricing and quality, and people very quick to call her maybe privileged or undeserving. I know recently she won an award, I think for the Amazon show. And, that's a really big achievement. But again, that's been met with harsh criticism. It was as if her story wasn't worthy enough besides some of the other people who were in her category. Now, I think what strikes me most is not really the volume of the criticism, but the nature of it. The scrutiny isn't necessarily about her work. It's about whether she's even allowed to be successful, whether she could grow beyond the version of herself that the public once related to. So I think really it's about the more she's outgrown this box that we've placed her in, the more people are punishing her for it. Now, people like to throw around the mantra, women should support each other women. It's meant to inspire solidarity and to remind us that lifting each other up is how we all rise. But the reality doesn't always reflect this. And I think too often admiration very quickly can shift into criticism the moment a woman's success grows beyond what feels comfortable for other people. Women are celebrated as long as they remain relatable, just like us. But the moment a woman does outgrow that role, maybe they step into a level of wealth or influence or visibility that really does set them apart, I think that applause begins to fade, and this is where the backlash begins. So I really feel that we have this culture where relatability has become a silent requirement for a woman's success. So, Molly May is a really good example of this. She's gone from a Love Island contestant, this girl next door, to this entrepreneur with her own fashion brand, a TV show. She should be celebrated as a success story. In many ways, she is. But I think the more she's distanced herself from this girl next door image through, her beautiful, luxurious home, private jets, her designer wardrobe, it seems to be the more criticism that she's attracted. And there are so many other examples of this. What is really amazing is that there just doesn't seem to be the same standards for men. The standards are starkly different. No one's demanding that, like Elon Musk or Jeff Bezos, that they have to soften their image to remain relatable. In fact, for men, their distance from ordinary life is often the thing that's admired. So it's their wealth, their power. These are the things that are treated as aspirational. But for women, ambition has to be continually tempered. It's got to be offset with humility, with self-depreciation. It's not enough for a woman to, excel at what she does or lead with vision or, achieve incredible results. She's also got to be balancing this with constant reminders that she is just like us. She's juggling motherhood. She's showing vulnerability. She's downplaying her privilege. And the moment she does rise too far above that standard, again, too wealthy, too polished, too powerful, admiration can turn into criticism. And what was once celebrated as inspiring can suddenly become evidence that she is out of touch. Now, something else that came up for me when I was thinking about this is that when a woman does rise too high, it can feel like, for other women, a betrayal of the collective. So it's as if by outgrowing the group, she's somehow turned her back on that group. So what happens here is we see success, instead of being celebrated, it's almost reframed as disloyalty. It's this, again, unspoken rule remains. Yes, climb high, but not too high. And, admiration for women often comes with these strings attached. We all love the underdog story, the relatable beginnings, the sense that another woman's success could be our success too, because we relate to her story. But once she moves too far ahead, be careful, because that admiration can very quickly sour. And what felt like a very inspiring, relatable beginning can begin to feel uncomfortable. It's almost like she's crossed this invisible boundary. And by doing so, she's left the rest of us behind. So again, it's this, disloyalty comes into it. It's this dangerous narrative, like her success. It's not just about her. It's somehow a betrayal of the collective. And this idea, the betrayal of the collective, I think it reflects this cultural expectation that women's identities are tied not only to their own ambitions, but also to the groups that they represent. So a woman who rises is expected maybe to just carry everyone else with her. She can't just rise on her own. Everybody else needs to be a part of her success too. And so she has to remain accessible, relatable. She has to remain loyal to the community from which she came. And if she dares to evolve beyond those expectations, she risks again being seen as maybe selfish or elitist or disloyal, or, she's become too arrogant. She's changed. We hear that a lot. Oh, she's not who she used to be. And this betrayal narrative is particularly sharp for women because historically, women have survived by solidarity. So in workplaces, in politics, in movements for equality, this idea of sisterhood has really been the backbone of these movements. But the flip side of that solidarity is this pressure to conform, to succeed just enough that you inspire people, but not so much that your life no longer mirrors the realities of those who are cheering you on. So kind of think of it this way, like when a woman, let's say, for example, Meghan Markle, I think springs to mind here. Like she's somebody who, came from pretty humble beginnings. She was pretty celebrated at, the beginning of her career. And even into her initial stages of her relationship with Harry. Now, look, you don't have to be a Meghan Markle fan, whether you are or you're not. I don't think it matters here. I think the point is when a woman transitions into a lifestyle of wealth and influence, she isn't just viewed as growing her own success. She's perceived as leaving maybe ordinary women behind. So her achievements, instead of being seen as opening doors, are maybe interpreted as closing them because her life becomes something that only a few people can now identify with. And I think the anger that was directed to her was less about her actions and more maybe about the discomfort of being reminded that success can create distance. And this is why, again, we forgive excess in men and we punish it in women. The male billionaire's private jet, often seen as aspirational. We see, pictures on Instagram and people aspiring to have that and proof of his exceptionalism. But if we think about it the other side, a woman having that kind of a success, again, it might be that she feels like she has betrayed the collective. She's refused to stay small enough to belong to everyone else. And, when I think about, where does this come from? I think, really, if we think about for much of history, opportunities for women have been painfully limited. So whether that's in the corporate space, in politics, in creative industries, there was a time when there was rarely space for more than one woman at the table. It would be that token woman in the boardroom. And her rise by default meant somebody else's exclusion. So in this kind of environment, competition is always going to be inevitable. And solidarity in these situations is going to be difficult to sustain. Now, obviously, things have changed a lot since then. There is far greater equality. We're not there yet, but there is much more equality. But this legacy, I think, still lingers in very subtle ways. And that scarcity mindset still kind of is there below the surface. That there's only so much room for women at the top. So another woman's success can feel quite threatening rather than it feeling inspiring. So this is where we see envy and rivalry. They're often disguising themselves as accountability. So if we think about people who heavily criticize another woman's choices or their appearance or their privilege, that perhaps go beyond fair commentary. Because let's face it, some of these comments, are valid. I'm not to say, let's say the comments on privilege, for example. There's a lot of validity in many of the frustrations that people have. But it's when we're going beyond that fair commentary and we're kind of veering into just tearing another woman down for the sake of it, that's when things go a bit too far. And I think there's really a painful irony here is that the women who are breaking barriers and widening the path often actually are the ones who find themselves the most isolated by the people that they're expecting to cheer them on, by other women. And again, this tension lies in the expectation placed on women as they rise. It's like we're kind of this double-edged sword. It's like we can't win either way. It's like this double bind. If a woman is too ordinary, she's just going to fade into the background. She's maybe dismissed as uninspiring or unworthy of attention. But if she's too extraordinary, she tips into the realm of being unrelatable or is punished for it. So her drive becomes threatening. Her confidence maybe becomes conceit. Her visibility becomes excess. It leaves women in this endless balancing act. Succeed, yes, but don't don't succeed too much. Shine. Yes, go ahead and shine, girl. But don't shine too brightly. Grow, yes, but not so far that you leave everyone else behind. And I think all of this ties into why women actually really fear success, why we so often self-sabotage ourselves on the path to greatness. When women witness how harshly successful women are treated, it plants this quiet but very powerful seed of fear. The backlash faced by those who rise too high, it sends us this message that success is dangerous. Being too visible, it's really risky. If you become too wealthy, you're going to be criticized. It teaches women that ambition must be carefully rationed. It's only to be pursued to a certain point where it still feels safe, where it's still socially acceptable. And I think this fear can show up in very subtle ways. It might be somebody turning down an opportunity because the spotlight feels too exposing. It might be underpricing your work or shrinking your financial goals because wealth carries this stigma of arrogance. It might look like staying small or staying quiet or, again, staying relatable because stepping fully into your potential might provoke judgment. It might provoke envy. Maybe people will make fun of you. So the result is, again, this invisible ceiling, not imposed from above, but internalized within. I think there's a lot of conversation about the structural barriers women face, getting into C-suite roles, getting funding for their businesses. But I think not many people are talking about the psychological barriers, those barriers where a woman is watching others be torn down and a fear of judgment is keeping that woman from taking the leap, even when the path is actually fully open. So it's this form of self-protection that ironically holds women back from the very freedom and influence that they do actually long for. So what is the solution here? I have no idea. What can we do to break this relatability trap? Well, I think first of all, we need to recognize that demanding constant relatability from women is not harmless. It's actually a very subtle form of control. So it's actually something that dictates how far a woman is allowed to rise, how she must present herself along the way. Relatability almost becomes this leash. It's ensuring that her success, it's got to be comfortable for everyone else. And if she does stray too far, she risks being pulled back down on that leash through criticism, through ridicule. Maybe people withdraw their support. And this pressure, it doesn't just shape how successful women are perceived. It's also actively shaping how women pursue success in the first place. And so, we've got women that are learning to center themselves, to shrink their goals, to soften their achievements, to avoid going for something, even in the first place, because ultimately they never want to be seen as being too much. And so in this way, this demand for relatability, it becomes less about connection and it's more really about containment. It's about keeping a woman's ambition in check. What's happening here is we're not denying women opportunities outright, but we're making the cost of rising too high for it to feel unbearable. Now, if I think about where this comes from, this demand for a woman to be, relatable, it doesn't emerge in a vacuum. It's got roots, I think, in centuries of social conditioning. So if we look back across history, a woman's value was measured by her ability to belong. It was, her role in the family and her community. A woman who was too independent or too ambitious or too visible risked disrupting the fragile social order. So relatability became this way to really keep women tethered to roles that served others. So this is what it all comes down to. If a woman is rising too high, she's serving herself more than she is serving others. And there's this expectation that, she has to put others' needs above her own. So there's this control element, and this is reinforced by scarcity. So again, for generations, opportunities for women have been so limited. So it feels like for one woman to rise, it could be a direct threat to another woman's ability to rise. So instead of space for many, there's, only room for that one token woman in leadership or on a stage or, in the spotlight. And I think also the media has also played a role here. So female public figures, they are often scrutinized, not just for the work that they're doing, but, it's also about how they're living their lives, how they're dressing, how they're parenting, how they're behaving. And stories about successful women, it's very rarely a conversation just about their accomplishments, their career accomplishments. They are framed through questions of, humility, whether they're still in touch, whether they're relatable. And again, this relentless focus trains us to see female ambition through a different lens, where power, again, it has to be softened. So I think really at the core of this is this basically control. It's a control to keep women manageable. Relatability, when it becomes the condition of acceptance, this reminder that you can succeed, but you can only do so if you make others feel comfortable with your success. It's basically a quieter form of policing than outright exclusion. Okay, so it's basically another way to keep women from stepping into their potential. And I think for women, really what we can do is have this true solidarity is when we're celebrating a woman's success, even when it surpasses our own experiences. It means applauding not just the stories that feel familiar or feel relatable, but also the ones that stretch beyond what we can personally relate to. It's very easy to support that underdog, but can we still cheer that woman on when she's no longer an underdog, when she's thriving, when her story no longer mirrors our own? When a woman expands into wealth, went into influence that maybe we never know ourselves. Her story, we have to remind ourselves it's not a portrayal. It's proof of what's possible. Whether we decide to go for that or not, it's proof of what is possible. And I think breaking the trap, it also means giving women permission to grow without the constant performance of humility. Yes, people like sometimes to watch relatable content, but we also like to watch aspirational content as well. And women shouldn't feel like they need to soften every victory with self-depreciation. I've spoken about this on my last podcast about likability, this need that we often have to kind of downplay our achievements or to kind of pick up on our flaws to make ourselves seem more relatable and therefore more likable. We should stop putting this expectation on other women, but also stop putting it on ourselves. Oh, I've got to be self-depreciating if I'm going to be accepted. I can't share my achievements. I have to be modest to be accepted. Confidence, ambition, even unapologetic excellence. You know what? I am really fucking good at this. These things must be welcomed just as much as vulnerability. And I think true support looks like cheering for women who rise, even when they outgrow our mirrors, even when their lives no longer resemble our own. Their distance from us, we can't see that as a loss. It's an expansion of what is possible for all of us. Mic drop. So I will jump off my soapbox now. I hope some of what I shared with you today resonates and makes sense. And yeah, as always, send me a message on Instagram. You can find me Dani_Watson_coaching. Come and say hello there. And yes, I very much look forward to connecting with you on the next episode. If today's episode lit something up in you and you are ready to build a coaching business that not only changes lives but creates the income and freedom you deserve, then right now you can request a free trial of our She Leads Academy coach training. To get your free trial, just head over to Instagram and visit us at she_leads.academy. You will find the link to the free trial in our bio. I cannot wait to see what's possible for you.